All right. All right. Good evening, everyone. Today is Monday the 13th, and we are at the OSD Innovation Center to get our school board meeting kicked off. We are going to have a number of things here after our roll call. We're going to be looking for an approval on the agenda. We're going to go through the consent calendar. I'll call out some donations that have been made. Doesn't look like we have anybody from the public, but we will ask again when we get there, as well as the OEA. We do have a student report, which is awesome considering it is after the end of school. And so with that, we will get started. Katie, could you call the roll, please?
Ms. Bijak? Ms. Garrison?
Yeah.
Ms. Dr. Lakuta?
Yes.
Mr. LeBrun?
Yes.
Mr. Pankratz?
Present.
Ms. Wright?
Here.
Ms. Flanagan?
Very good. Thank you. I do have proof of notice here, so that is taken care of. And so next, I would like an approval to approve the agenda. I'm sorry. Motion to approve. Thank you, Troy. Thank you, Heather. Katie, could you please take the roll?
Mr. Pankratz?
Yes.
Ms. Garrison?
Yes.
Dr. Lakuta?
Yes.
Ms. Wright?
Yes.
Mr. LeBrun?
Yes. Next, we'll go on to Section A, the consent calendar. The consent calendar, I'm just going to pull out of the consent calendar briefly the donations that have come in since the last time. From the Oregon Choral Boosters, $250.09 for choir sheet music for FES. A donation from Tom Miller for $300 to the pool. Hagstrom Transportation for $500 for a scholarship. The Oregon Masonic Lodge, $1,500 for a scholarship. Summit Credit Union, $500 for a scholarship. Wisco Industries, $1,000 for a scholarship. There's an anonymous donation of $200 for the FES scholarship. The Coyle family, $175 donation for FES rotations teachers. And finally, Anna Seidenstricker, for $100 for the A-team scholarship. Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar? Oh, yes.
We did put a new
Oh.
yellow and peach.
Oh, yes,
Those are
thank you.
updates to the original board packet.
Yes, just to draw everybody's attention to these, from a staffing update, we have 3 resignations. And do I need to read all those?
You don't need to.
Okay. And then we also have some new staffing assignments that are also part of the consent calendar. So with that, could I get a motion to approve the consent calendar?
Nope, the
sorry, I
intern
didn't
on
see
the
that.
front side as well. Were the other two.
Oh, yes, very good. One of the, on the staffing assignment list, one of those is a new principal at OMS, and Dr. Bergstrom will talk about that in her update. Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar? Troy?
I will move to approve the consent calendar as printed.
Thank you. Leslie, any of you? Any other discussion? Katie, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Pankratz?
Yes.
Ms. Wright?
Yes.
Ms. Garrison?
Yes.
Dr. Lakuta? Mr. LeBrun?
Yes. Thank you. Item B, public comment. Do we have anybody here for public comment? Anybody here for public comment? Anybody here for public comment? Hearing none, we'll move on. OEA report. Does OEA want to say anything this evening? Doesn't look like it. All right, thank you. Student report. Who would like to kick us off?
I can do that.
Excellent.
So, as we know, school did just end, and with that was a successful finals week with a new finals schedule. And included with that, we also just started the first round of summer school today for credit recovery classes, as well as classes aimed for first-time credit in fields such as math, which is a core subject, and this is one of the first times recently we have offered that. As the school year is wrapping up, we're also wanted to cover some of the accomplishments from our clubs and organizations. This year, Student Council has raised $348 for the Friends of Brooklyn Wildlife, as well as around 200 winter items from the Winter Coat Drive. Students for Life has collected childcare donations And the shoe drive was able to collect and deliver shoes to a nation in Africa. We also had the Equity Network potluck last week, Wednesday. It was a group of middle school and high school social justice clubs came together to celebrate what they'd accomplished this year. And when we looked to sports, we saw the boys lacrosse team won a state title, I think just last week or the week before. And girls soccer is ranked #1 in the country from the Coaches Association, and they're going to go to state on the 16th. Anything to add?
That is awesome. I hope you both know, and I hope not just your classmates in the senior class, the newly graduated senior class, but across the high school and the other schools, how much this community identifies with the success of their students. Overall, the success of their students. The success of the way the success of our students goes, so does the community. And so I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. I can't tell you how much I appreciate the two of you being here this semester as well. You've always had a very full report, which I appreciate because I don't have kids in school anymore. And so you catch me up every other week, and I really do appreciate that. Does anybody have any questions for our student reporters? Mary.
So so you said that the final schedule was new. How did you both find that? Or did you not? Did I misinterpret?
No, last year, I think as sophomores of this previous year, we hadn't had a normal schedules, final schedule. So last year, I don't think we had anything different. It was a short day and then projects we had at the end of the year. But this year, I think it obviously took a lot of preparation, but it was just kind of the regular experience, closer to what we had before COVID, I believe.
Yeah, because at this point, only half to a quarter of the building actually had a full finals or midterm schedule like that, so it was very new for the majority of the building, and it went over quite well.
Yeah.
Good. Excellent. Thank you.
Again, thank you both very much. Congratulations. All right, to move on to our action item C, approval of supplemental payments to bus contractors. I believe Andy is going to speak to that.
Absolutely. So this feels a little bit out of order a little bit because we've just actually completed the year, obviously, as the students shared with us. But we had been trying to figure out a way to compensate our transportation carriers because they have not had a raise for the non-fuel component of their contract for the entire year. We really should have brought this forward probably a few months ago, but we wanted to bring it forward now in order to compensate our contractors because just like everybody else in this inflation area that we are living in, the contractors have also had to work through difficulties with trying to keep employees happy, as well as increased costs associated with maintaining their buses and the like. The fuel side, we have that taken care of because the conditions of pay talk about how fuel is and how mileage is compensated, but it doesn't talk about hourly things or their base pay, which is the vast majority of their compensation. So at this time, we'd like to forward a recommendation to you to treat the contractors similar, even though they're not employees, but similar to how we treated our employees back, you folks approved it, I believe, in January or February, which was a 1.23% kind of on their base rates. And then in this situation, a $1,500 stipend per route. That totals to around $60,000. We do have that money still available in one-time funding from the $2.5 million that we accumulated over the last 2 years. So that was available to compensate that and had actually been planned all along. We had reserved a certain amount of compensation knowing that this day would come.
So everybody's had a chance to review the proposal and the recommendation. I think first of all, we need to get it on the floor, so we need a motion. All right, Heather, Mary, second. Now to discussion. Does anybody have any questions for Andy regarding the recommendation that's been laid out? Heather?
I just have one. When you say just completed, are you talking about the school year has been just
Yeah,
completed?
21, 22.
Okay, got it. That's all. I just was a clarification of if some payment had been.
Mary?
So first, I wanted to say thank you for putting the background, because I found that very interesting, that we only contract with residents of the district. Does that mean that the drivers also have to be?
No, the drivers don't have to
Okay.
be, just the contractors, and the contractors can have up to 4 buses. So, but I would say a fair portion of them are drivers are live around here. Most of them.
Okay. Yeah, no, it has been a challenging couple of years, recognizing that the drivers have, I can't even remember how many route changes there were last year, but
I think there were about 4,
yeah,
4 to 5.
yeah. Okay, thank you. No more questions.
Leslie?
Oh,
Sorry about that. So this kind of goes along with the same kind of thing where we did this with the teachers, and I understand we're using this out of one-time funding. What is your proposal for future? Because we all know we're in a tight situation, and we can't just continue to give stipends. I mean, that's not. I mean, I'm looking at specifically transportation at this point, but as the bigger picture, do you have thoughts?
I do have thoughts. We're actually going to be talking about that in a presentation in just a few moments. So apologize if this feels out of order, but I think I'm going to help you answer that question in just a bit.
Troy?
I'll go. So not really any questions. I had some questions earlier. I talked with Andy a little bit about and spent quite a bit of time reviewing the information and some of the background information. But I guess just want to start off by saying that I'm fully supportive of the spirit of this proposal. I'm really thankful for our bus contractors and all they've done for us in the 2021 school year, the additional routes. As well as this past school year, you know, we did not need to disrupt our schooling due to transportation this past year. And if you remember, some of our neighboring districts did have challenges with transportation where they did have to disrupt their schooling. And we were a district that didn't do that. And so I'm very thankful to our bus contractors for doing that. I really consider the bus contractors just an extension of our staff. They're not directly contracted with us, but our bus drivers take care of our kids, and just like the rest of our staff do. So I'm fully supportive of the spirit of the this memo. However, I guess I would like to point out a difference between the teachers, what we've done for the teachers' stipend and the bus contractors' stipend. For the staff, we did prorate their $1,500 stipend based on their full or part-time status. So I would offer a motion to amend this memorandum to insert the language, let me find it here. It would read an additional stipend in the amount of $1,500 for full-time staff, prorated for part-time staff, so that would be consistent with our what we've done for other employees. So that's my motion.
Great. Thank you.
Are you making
Oh.
Yes, because
Okay.
there's a motion on the
Okay.
floor. Mm-hmm.
Got it. I would offer that as a friendly amendment if you would accept that.
Of course.
I can do that. Is it for clarification? try it. Tell me if you don't like it. Okay. Andy, I like the friendly amendment, but I'm just curious if you can speak to, do you have numbers on part-time versus full-time from what we're really talking about?
So I want to talk to the sorry. One of you have to. There we go. I'd want to talk to the contractors. My general impression, except for the shuttles, which I think run just about the entire day, would be that most bus drivers would kind of fit into that 4-hour world, probably. So it's kind of like cutting it in half, essentially, would the stipend for those people. The shuttle folks, I think, are driving a good portion of the day, so probably closer to full-time or 3/4. So I'd have to work with the contractors to kind of identify that. And it's not really specific to people, it's more specific to the bus, right? And how long the routes are and everything. So we'd have to figure that out. I would share with you the one thing would be that, health insurance and those types of things have increased for our employees. Contractors don't have that, so, or if they do, it's a cost to them, not to us. So there is a little bit of a difference in that world. Just something to consider.
Okay, so to use Troy's words, I like the spirit of your friendly amendment, but I feel like we don't have enough information to make that decision, so that's a no for me.
Okay, and so I have a clarification as well. I believe it's a clarification. I agree, we may not have enough information. It does have, the fact that we have to have a conversation to understand how those routes play out. I don't know that we need to have the detail of that conversation necessarily, because really, this is to the bus contractors, not the individual drivers. So is that correct, Andy?
Yeah, the way I was trying to interpret what Troy and I talked about and his motion was that thinking about how long's the bus driving, because it's not a particular person, right? It's how long's the bus driving, what's the pre-check, what's the cleaning, what's the after, all that process, as well as running, most of our buses run two runs in the morning and then 2 runs in the afternoon. So I'm just kind of guessing 4 hours or so.
And so I don't, Troy, to your point, I don't know if we, like with our existing employees, teachers and paras and things like that, I don't know that we have necessarily visibility. For instance, Jim may have someone who just drives the 8 o'clock bus, and that same bus is on the road all day, but it's with 3 different drivers. And I don't know that we have the visibility to break it down that way. We just know we contract with Jim for a route all day. It's a full-time route, not necessarily full-time the way we think of 8 hours a day or a shift a day. It's a bus a day. And so I don't know that I think that's something that the contractors need to work out with the individual employees. However, we know that when the bus is on the road, an employee is driving that bus. And so I guess we're going to be depending on the contractor to flow that down through their system because we don't have the visibility, nor do we pay the individual bus driver. Is that right, Andy?
That's correct.
Do you feel any differently about that, Troy? I see exactly where you're coming from. Do you feel any differently about it?
I get your point. I do get your point, but I guess I'm kind of stuck on wanting to treat our groups of employees similarly. So that's, I guess, yeah. So if you've rejected my friendly amendment, then we probably need to go to vote on this.
I think Gina has some more to add.
Normally, I would not weigh in on this. I have a question. Thank you. I just have a I have a procedural point, and so because we have a motion and we have a second, if you want to do something that's different than that motion, then you should vote no, and that gives someone an opportunity to make another motion. So I just want to clarify that, okay? And then I don't know if it's helpful, but since we'll have to write the condition of payment, I'm just wondering about if it's worth explaining like what you mean. Like for staff, for me, full-time is very clear. It's 40 hours the person is working. So if you vote it down and you want to explore Mr. Pankrat's motion, I would just want more clarification as to how to define full-time for a contractor versus part-time, since we'll have to administer it. And I want to make sure that we're administering what the board's intent was. Does that make sense? Okay.
I think that, for me, that clarifies that we have full-time contractors, and they could have part-time employees, but this recommendation is for our contractors. I do understand what you're saying, though, Troy. I just don't think we have the latitude nor the legal responsibility to flow those dollars down through the employee base. That's all I'm saying. I have a couple of questions, actually. Andy, I know that the contractors, they pay differently. There isn't, one contractor might pay for one route differently than they do for another route. And so I'm looking for more of a range here than anything. Can you give me a range of the, again, the contract that we have with them, the conditions of payment, what it assumes for an hourly rate? And if you need to use a range, that's okay.
Yeah, so if you're talking about the range of what the drivers are getting paid, is that
Yes.
what you're going for?
Yes.
Perhaps Mr. Hagstrom can help me with that since he's here. And I'm going to keep talking for a minute so he has time to process that question.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot. Jim.
We do pay, the way we pay the contractors is there's a base rate of pay for their first run of a route. So in other words, if they go out and get our K6 students, that's the first run. That's a fairly hefty payment in the $250, $260 range, I believe, to kind of do that. The second run is less expensive, and the rationale for that is even if it's only one run, you have the cost associated with the bus, and there's probably a payment on that bus because they finance them over time. So to have that bus, it costs a lot just to kind of turn the key in the morning. The second run is less expensive because you've already kind of compensated, because our bus drivers aren't promised 2 runs, they're only promised 1 run. So we've made the system more efficient by utilizing more buses for 2 runs, and we're set up for growth that way as well. But that's how that's set up. After that, it's all mileage based, and so there's a certain amount of mileage, a certain amount of cost per mile, and then that number's been indexed to the fuel cost, and then we look at what the fuel costs are on the first of each month, and then that every 5 cents that the fuel costs go up, and they've been going up more than 5 cents, obviously, then there's an extra penny associated with their mileage amount. So that's kind of how that works. How the contractors pay is variable. I did do a study on that last year, but I can't, for the life of me, remember the range. But there was a fairly decent range, probably at least $5, $6 an hour range in between what the contractors paid.
Okay.
Can you give a range, Jim?
It's really with 13 different owner-operators.
Do you want to come up to the microphone, Jim, just so anybody who's listening is wondering who we're speaking to out in the audience?
I didn't know that.
Sure. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Jim Hagstrom. I've been a contractor in the district for way too long for me to admit to.
Got some time left.
I've been here longer than Andy, so that should tell you. I was even here longer than Zach when Steve was sitting over there, so I would once in a while correct him. So, at any rate, each contractor does pay their employees the way they choose to. I guess that's the best way to put it. So to identify what each individual driver makes per hour, it's going to be really difficult. And as Andy said, you can develop kind of a range, I guess. But each contractor does something different throughout the day because we actually have 4K runs. We have co-curricular contractors who drive well into the night at a rate of
15-ish dollars, right?
right around there, yeah. So not on the high end, if you can compare that. So to identify, I think what your point is are there full-time drivers as opposed to part-time drivers? Certainly, there are drivers that drive a lot more than others do. And I think the initial conversation I had with Andy is it's kind of up to each individual contractor to kind of determine how much of that. What do we identify this? I'm trying to remember.
A supplemental.
Supplemental. Okay, so I don't want to identify that incorrectly. So I don't want to say you're kind of at our mercy, but we appreciate the willingness to treat us as employees, but at the same time, we do feel like, but we understand there's certainly a significant difference between school district employees and bus drivers, operators. I'd be happy to take any questions if I'm confusing you more than what you were originally. But there could be a significant range of payment between certain contractors, but I think we're all pretty close, depending on what we do.
So, just as we have talked about with the challenge with our budget and the challenge we're going to have going forward, at this point we have our bus contractors in front of us. It's important to understand that if the hourly rate is $15 an hour, it's important to understand that a 1.23 bump in that rate, you can do the math. It's pennies, not dollars an hour, and we all know that lots has changed at Quick Trip in the last 12 months. And so I raised that as, more than anything, I thought it was important to raise that in a public forum. So just as we are having these same conversations about our teachers and everybody who staffs this operation as an employee, we are having the exact same conversations with our contractors, in this case our bus contractors. And so remember that this proposal is really a looking back proposal. And so it gets back to your point, Leslie, that yes, we can address this past year, but what are we going to do for the coming year? And we're having that conversations on literally every single line item on our financial statements on a school board meeting by school board meeting basis. And we are going to have another one of those yet tonight. So I just raised the issue just so people have a gauge as to what we're talking about here. All right? Yes, Heather.
I just want to confirm, so when we are talking about this $1,500, this is per, I guess now I'm more confused that there are 13 contractors, how the payment is actually going out. I'm supportive of doing it, I just want to understand how it's being calculated.
So it's by route. So if there's a route or a shuttle, it would be paid by that. So bus 11, that's $1,500 because it runs routes and that type of thing. So that's how we were trying to equate it to people in our world.
Mary.
Follow up on Heather's question. Troy, would you?
Oh,
Thank you. So if bus 11 has a morning route and an afternoon route, that's 3,000, and then no, it's
$1,500
per bus.
per bus.
Okay. And so then there's no additional considerations for like extracurriculars or,
We did not put that in this proposal
Okay.
because it's so variable.
right, okay, all right. Just trying to understand. Thank you.
All right, are there any other questions? We have a motion and a second on the table. Are there any other questions? All right,
Sorry, Tim, we're
Yes,
we're still
Troy.
in discussion. I'm sitting here trying to come up with some math to get something that works for me to get to a yes, and I'm unfortunately not able to get there. I was going to try and prorate it, but I guess I just don't have enough information to know, to your point, Tim, about being able to split up those routes. So, like I said, I'm fully in spirit of supporting this motion, but just can't quite get there because of the differential between how we're treating the rest of our staff. So.
Andy, I just have one more question.
Yep.
Do we get together with the contractors on an annual basis just to get okay, what are we looking at this year? Do we have that kind of discussion where it says, here, we have a budget and we have expenses, where there's a meeting of the minds?
Absolutely. That's been a little, not strange, it's been a little unusual in the last 2 years with the pandemic. But yeah, in the past, we have done that typically in the fall, once we kind of know what kind of money we're going to be having available. Similar to how we've been doing negotiations with our employees.
All right, thank you. Yes, go ahead, Heather.
This would be, okay, so there are 13 contractors, you said about $60,000. So that $60,000, I realize that all things are not equal, but I think that's where, Troy, I appreciate what you're saying, but to me, are the contractors more equivalent to a full-time employee? Understanding that doesn't mean drivers, right? But that means that the contractors.
I think you could look at it to some degree. If you start putting in extracurriculars, now everybody doesn't do extracurriculars, but the group does work as a group, right? They all help each other and kind of make it work, even though they're 13 separate people.
Right.
That's the unique component of us. So, there are extra duties that they all do that I didn't include in this. I just said, if there's a bus 13, bus 12, but that's the $1,500. So if that helps to look at it that way, maybe that would be another component.
Troy, that's
to
how
it.
I'm thinking about it, because as opposed to 600 employees, which there is a big fluctuation within those 600, we're talking about 13, and that it's not as easily a definable, it's a much smaller segment, and it's not as easily definable as our staff. I totally understand what you're saying, and I thought it was such a valid point to think about how we're trying to make it, treat people in a similar fashion. But for me, given that it's the 13 contractors, I'm comfortable making that distinction, especially given the ebb and flow. So I'm all right with that.
Lastly, I'm echoing Troy. Has anybody heard anything where we dropped a plate from busing this year, or last year, or the year before? We changed the schedules 4 times this year. We've had districts in this county who have had to change their school schedule. And so I know this, Jim, I know this is a look back. You know that our budget is challenged. But I am looking forward to the fall powwow, for lack of a better term, where you can talk with Andy about how things have changed from a contractor's perspective, and Andy can share with you how things are changing from our budget perspective, so that we can get to a place that makes sense, because you guys have never let us down. Katie, you call the roll.
Ms. Garrison?
Yes.
Dr. Lakuta?
Yes.
Mr. Pankratz?
No.
Ms. Wright?
Yes.
Mr. LeBrun?
Yes. All right, that passes. Jim, thank you.
I thank you guys for your support, and I totally understand where you're coming from. So,
Okay, then we'll move on to discussion items, the committee reports, policy. Heather.
Yes, we just had our first policy meeting earlier this evening, and a couple quick updates. We reviewed policy 411, and that will be coming to the board at the next meeting. And then we also began the review of the employee handbook, and we expect to wrap that up at our next meeting as well. And our next meeting is July 11th, 5.
Very good. Any questions for Heather? Vision steering. Troy.
So we have had a couple of meetings in the past month with our, if you remember, we contracted with Ayers Associates to do our recreational facilities study, and we had a couple of meetings with our youth sports groups. We've learned a lot. I think they were excellent meetings. What we've determined at this point in time is that we're going to slow down our schedule a little bit on that report. We just feel that it's important to have more community engagement and avoid kind of rushing through to get to that report, just because of some of the things that we've learned from those initial meetings. We just feel like we want to put a little bit more time into that and make sure we're reaching all of the correct parties to get their input. I will tell you a couple of takeaways from those first meetings. Number one, we just have a really great group of youth sports leaders in this community. Just really great children-focused people who are in it for the right reasons, and they just had some really great ideas, and were really open with us about some of the challenges that they're experiencing. And we didn't have a lot of time to do brainstorming on solutions, but just want to say we have a great group of youth sports leaders in this community, and we're going to continue to work with them. Those leaders, I think each and every one of them has expressed their gratitude for the school district and how supportive the school district is with accommodating their needs for supporting our youth. So I'm looking forward to the next steps, but those are the next steps. So we will have a vision steering meeting later this month. I think it's scheduled for the 22nd. Agenda items, we will provide a more detailed update on the recreational facilities study. Tim, I think we were going to potentially dive into the Worth Woods master plan, and then I'll work with Dr. Bergstrom on staffing and funding for the district as well. And that's it.
Very good. Any questions for Troy and vision steering? Thank you, Troy. School finances. Remember I said we're going to have another conversation about this? So Andy is going to talk about school finances.
I am. My favorite topic. So this is going to look very similar because it is almost exactly similar to the presentation that I provided before, but just kind of as a review of where we were a few weeks ago. So I like to talk with this slide is 79% of our funding comes from what's contained within what's called the revenue limitation formula that the state of Wisconsin uses for school districts. It's been in place since about 1994, so it's been in place for quite a while. And you see that is composed of property taxes and state aid. So I like to put this, I like to use this analogy, and it's probably a little bit goofy of an analogy, but work with me. We're kind of a two-income family, but we've got this weird situation that both of the people in that family work for the same employer. And the employer, if one person gets a raise in that family, the other person loses money. That's how this works. The only way that family gets more money is if they have more children. That's the school district, if you would. That's the analogy that I'll use. So right now, the legislature has basically said that we get no additional funding for those students, for those people that we have in our family for 2 years. And we just finished the first year of that, and next year is the second year of the biennium budget. We don't know what will happen the third year out or 2 years from now. So you can see that the majority of the money is coming from there. It's all limited, and so our ability to raise funds is extremely limited. The other areas are, and actually you could take that green 5% and throw that in there, so it's really about 84%, because that's similar to how the revenue limit formula works. So then everything else is open enrollment and grants for the most part, and those are mostly the grants are things that we get based on title, number of low-income students that we have, or special education needs that we have, spending that we have. So I want to make sure I didn't go 2 slides here. Impact of the state of Wisconsin's fiscal policy toward schools. I mentioned that the state's how they've been viewing us, I guess, from the legislative point of view. In 2002, Wisconsin per pupil spending ranked 12th in the nation. We were 11% above the national average. In 2020, and this is new, we just got this data about 2 weeks ago. We dropped to 26th in the nation. The last time I showed this slide, it was actually from 2019, and we were 25th, and we were 4.5% underneath spending for the nation. We've dropped to 26th within 1 year, and went down another percent to 5.6% below the national average for spending. And keep in mind, that was the largest drop in that time period, or is still the largest drop in the time period, and that does not even include the 21-22 school year, which had a big 0, and nor next year, which is also a big 0. So we can obviously anticipate that our ranking is going to be dropping significantly further in the future. So what have we done strategically to try to blunt any of this? Well, back in 2019, 2020, we established a one-time funding mechanism. Remember, this was before ESSER was even talked about. And we found $1.5 million that we didn't spend in our budget that year and put it aside. Then 2021, there was some ESSER funding available. We again put another $1 million aside, and that created this $2.5 million fund that we've been using to kind of basically provide one-time stipends to our employees in compensation this year. Otherwise, they would not have gotten anything. And that same fund is what we just approved for the transportation contractors. That fund, for the most part, has been expended. We are tracking about $200,000 left in that fund at this point in time. Now, we've also had ESSER funding, and our ESSER funding is, ESSER stands for, by the way, Elementary and Secondary Emergency Relief Funds, and there have been 3 phases of that. The first phase came kind of in the summer of 2020 and was about $100,000 for us. We basically used that to help pay for Chromebooks for our employees, or not our employees, for our students. And then the ESSER 2 came around. The number kind of moved around on us all last year. It was $400-some thousand, and then it jumped up to $600,000 when the Joint Finance Committee stopped, finally approved the process. And then ESSER 3 was $1 million, a good portion of the year through the winter, and then became closer to $3 million for us. Once again, the Joint Finance Committee kind of backed off some of their positioning, and there was a negotiation between the U.S. Department of Education and the Joint Finance Committee. That's where they landed. So all totaled, right around $4 million in ESSER that we've had, and we are spending that, as we've talked about, for staffing and to meet the needs of the students who have been negatively impacted because of the pandemic. So that's our strategic choice of how we've been utilizing those funds. We have over $1 million next year scheduled for funding staffing. We spent about $1 million this year in that ESSER 3 component, and then we'll have some amount of money left over after next year from that. Major sources of operating expenditures. This will not be a surprise to you. It's people. We are a people-oriented business service, and I keep in mind that the purchase services that are there, Jim and his colleagues fit in there. That's a portion of that. So if we had our own employees, a portion of that 15% would fit, move to the left there. So we are, close to 80% there. 80% of that, and easily if we move transportation contractors in there, and even some of our night custodians are contracted. If you move them in there, it would be well over that. So the challenges that we have are inflation is really reduced the amount of purchasing power that our employees have, as well as the district. And costs are going up in a lot of different areas of our lives. And right now, all we've been able to do is provide a stipend to our employees and our contractors. And that was the 1.23. The number from CPI it says 22-23. That's actually, this is important to keep in mind, that's actually the CPI for the calendar year 2021, okay? But the way the state works is, this is kind of a negotiation thing. They certify that in the late winter or spring of the following year. So that's kind of a trailing number for us. People have already had that impact, right? Because that's something that the federal government studied. So purchasing power has already been degraded by 4.7% there. And then that's the amount that would go into play for this next year if we had a funding source for it. 23-24, we are hearing huge ranges of increases. I think the 8.4% is actually, if you take basically through April and then say that the index doesn't increase anymore, you're in that 8% range. So, and it might be through May. It should be probably through May because that number just came out last week. So that's significant. That's really significant, and that's what we've all had to kind of endure so far this calendar year. So if you add just the 4.7 and the 1.23, you're at 2.1 million impact to our employees alone. And then for next year, even though we are using ESSER, we do have a shortfall in our regular budget outside of ESSER of about $1.15 million. If you recall, this last year we used some one-time funding sources from the governor, who kind of was able to redirect some money from his pot of federal dollars to us. That was $300 and some thousand. And then if you recall, health insurance, even though we made a strategic change and we were able to kind of have some cost containment, we still had a 4.5% increase there, as well as the fuel costs that I mentioned with the contractors that we've had to endure that as well. So there's some costs associated with that right there. So you can kind of do the math with what kind of hole we have without additional revenue. So the bottom line, this is the cliff, again, that we found the picture of. And there's this huge fiscal cliff that all school districts in the state of Wisconsin are dealing with because of the one-time money. We have one-time money. We have a way to deal with our today, but no good way to deal with our tomorrow, unfortunately. So additional per pupil state funding for 22-23, just like 21-22, is zero per pupil, okay? I will say we did get a little bit of money on our special education reimbursables, and that added up to a couple $100,000 for this next year, but that's it. There are no additional funds. So, and then inflation is obviously going up and impacting our employees and our contractors and the school district. So what have other school districts done might be one of the questions that you're asking yourself. And I can tell you that many of them are doing what our state legislators asked them to do, and that's rather than using the ESSER funds to help address the needs that have been unmet by the students that have been impacted by the pandemic, they are using them to fund their operations. Now, I will also tell you, and I think I shared with you last time, that it's really variable as to how much money these school districts got. If you had more low-income students, you got more funds. So larger, more urban areas got significantly more money than suburban areas. So they might be able to live longer on that one-time money because they have a larger pot of funds. But eventually, we're all going to have a problem with that fiscal cliff that I showed you the picture of a moment ago. Some have talked about reducing services and staff a little bit. Right sizing is something that some have talked about, trying to figure out, kind of put a positive spin on that. Some have talked about increasing class sizes. And then some are obviously seeking operational funds through referendums. And a number of school districts around the Madison area are doing that this November or planning that the following year. I think that was my last slide. So with that said, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have for me.
Any questions for Andy? We've heard this before, spoken in a little bit different words, but it all comes down to the same shortfall.
I'll go. So I don't know that I have any questions, Andy. You always keep us up to date, and we've been discussing this for quite some time. One thing I guess I just want to emphasize, and I think you talked about it at the last meeting, and it's our policy, I think it's 611. That's our fiscal policy that really forces us to take action if we were to, want to use our fund balance to try and solve some of these problems. I don't even know that that's going to get us to the $2 or $3 million that we're talking about.
There's probably a couple $1 million cushion when we're done this year, because the cushion was bigger when we had that 2.5 million that we set aside for COVID responses. We have a little bit of cushion above what our cash flow is, but not 4 million. So that would be a difficulty. Doesn't mean that you can't utilize that. If you look at the fund balance policy, it basically says if you go below that, you have to come up with a plan to reestablish that cash flow component.
Yeah, it really just makes that cliff taller.
And pushes that out a little bit.
Yeah, so I mean, I would like to put it out there, I guess, for board consideration. I really think that we need to start discussing an operational referendum. We do have November gubernatorial election coming up, which traditionally is a high turnout. So we would have a good opportunity to put a question to our voters, and we would expect a large input in that election, and our taxpayers could vote on an operational referendum. But I'm just not seeing another reasonable solution in the near term. So I guess I would put that out there for the board to start discussing and considering an operational referendum for the November election.
Any other questions for Andy? Andy, just out of curiosity, and I know that we've had sideswipe conversations about this, when would that decision have to be made?
I believe that it's 70 days prior to the election, so August, the end of August. Traditionally, the attorneys ask you to do it not at the last moment, but
Sure.
a little bit ahead of time.
Sure. So that's 60,
mid-August.
75 days out.
70 days, I think, is the number that's in statute.
Okay. All right. Again, any other questions for Andy? Okay. Thank you, Andy.
You bet.
On to some informational items. I'll turn it over to Dr. Bergstrom.
So for visioning and strategic planning, we've been going through quite a bit of this in the sense that we've had the board and administrator workshop. Next week is the administrator workshop. So we're moving through our framework in order to come up with a strategic plan and some annual priorities that we all feel really good about. And in policy tonight, the portrait of a graduate was discussed. And that was exciting to know that we're continuing to make that progress. And that'll be a significant part of our administrative workshop, is making sure we're all planning forward toward our collective vision of what we want for our Oregon graduates. I'm going to move right to the teaching and learning update because we have some really cool things. And the first was a strong end to the school year. You can see there's all kinds, but they sure look like they had a good time, right? And so it was a really strong, happy ending to the school year. Happy not because it was ending, but because we had, happy, healthy kids that were in school the entire year in an uninterrupted fashion. And now we also have some exciting staffing updates. So because our quite wonderful Mr. Koenig, who is our administrative intern at the middle school, because he is leaving to take an administrator contract in a different district, we had the opportunity to hire Stacy Starkey as our middle school administrative intern. And she was a special education teacher in a couple of different districts for close to 10 years. And then for the last 3 years, she's been a statewide coach related to healthy and resilient schools. So she's bringing a breadth and depth of experience to the administrative intern position at the middle school, and we're happy to have Ms. Starkey with us. Then the Brooklyn administrative intern, Brooklyn had an opening because Lindsay Engelhardt, thankfully, has taken on the position of 4K director. And we're very grateful that Lindsay is willing to take on that challenge, but it did leave a hole at Brooklyn. And Kyle Bleckner, who is currently an elementary teacher at Sauk Prairie, he applied and was accepted in our administrative intern program. And once again, we're very excited to have these two new additions, Mr. Bleckner and Ms. Starkey. And then we also have a new middle school principal. We're very excited to welcome Jorge Avalos to the middle school here in Oregon. He just this past year was the interim principal at Savannah Oaks in the Verona School District, and he has for several years been an associate principal at Verona High School. Prior to that, he was a Spanish language teacher for a decade, and he's bringing, once again, similar to the other people we've discussed, a breadth and depth of experience to our district, and we couldn't be more excited to welcome him to the team. It's been a real pleasure. We had wonderful, high-quality candidates who were all people that we would be very proud to have on our team, and Mr. Avalos is the right one for the job. So it'll be an exciting adventure for both he and the middle school students and staff next year. So moving forward with all of that information, we have all of these new wonderful people joining us at Administrator Workshop. That's for 2 days next week. And the Learning and Student Achievement Department has been doing a curriculum consolidation kickoff party that will be at the second half of the week. Don't let the term party fool you. They're in this room working on curriculum, but we just like to make it festive. So there's a lot of really good stuff happening there. You see that the majority of the month of July is our summer semester, and you'll notice from some of the newspaper articles that have been out and about recently that Oregon is doing really, really well in being able to staff our summer semester program. So we're serving 1,700 students, and that's a really big summer semester program for a district our size. So I have nothing but great respect for the teachers who teach in the program and for the principals who are coordinating it. Another important piece will be onboarding all of our new positions. We've hired new staff, a new principal, new interns, and soon we will be adding a new transportation and safety director. And so making sure we have everything in place to ensure success for all of those people is a good portion of our summer. And it's important to note that we do have the really wonderful services of a full release mentor. That is a person whose sole full-time job it is. Her name is Cindy Hedstrom, a great teacher, and now she is our full release mentor, and she supports all of the new staff who are new to the profession. So if you just got your degree and this is your first job, she spends a lot of time with you, making sure that you have all of the support you need to be the teacher that we expect in the Oregon School District. I also just want to mention summer meal options. It's, strangely placed in the teaching and learning update, but honestly, a big portion, and I think we found this out certainly in the pandemic, we are a big part of the community, and it's not just for what we're teaching, but it's for all the other things that we are able to provide for our students and their families. And in the summer semester, that includes meals. So, due to federal regulations for our summer semester program at the high school, you would have to purchase meals at the high school. However, families who are willing to go to Netherwood and Prairie View and eat on site in our outdoor classroom, those meals are free over the course of the summer. We also have great partners in the pantry. And so our food pantry is also offering free meals at locations that are perhaps more accessible to our families who live in Brooklyn and Fitchburg and aren't coming into the village for summer semester. So they have some food distribution, meal site distribution, open for anyone in Brooklyn and Fitchburg. So there's information that's gone home on that. And our fall school meals, to foreshadow for everybody, those will be meals for purchase again. And there are applications for free and reduced meal eligibility available, so people can fill that out this summer. Any questions before I go to the superintendent report? Yes.
Just on the food service, when you were talking about for summer, the free meals are only at the Netherwood Prairie View conjunct area.
Yes.
Is that a government required, or how does that work out?
That it's a government requirement related to where we are allowed to offer the free meals. If we could make the rules, we would offer them at the high school where our students will be. But because we have to abide by the rules as they are, we may only offer them at Prairie View and Netherwood.
A follow-up to Leslie's question. And so if students are at the high school and they finish with their summer semester time and are able to get to Netherwood/Prairie View, the timing of that free lunch coincides that kids at summer school could partake in that. Is that right?
It does. And I hope
I
some of
figured it would.
our students come over on their bikes, or families come over after, they have finished summer semester and they're being driven home. So absolutely. Anything to add, Mr. Weiland?
The only other thing I'd say is it's true that students that do not qualify for free and reduced lunch would have to pay for the food here at the high school. But if the students do qualify, they would be free here at the high school.
Anything else? All right. This is a big one because this is the end of the year report. So this is one fun thing after another. And what you can see on here is the bus driver appreciation breakfast, which really was a lot of fun. And I got to learn a whole bunch of new things about our drivers and contractors. And I got some great stories about buses back in the day. And it was just an opportunity to connect with people who do so much for our students and really, really do it from the heart. That also very similar to our district retirement celebration. And you can see a lot of our retirees reflected in these pictures. Very, very warm feelings for people who have dedicated so much of their lives for doing good things for other people. And so the district celebration is only one thing. The schools also have a celebration, and sometimes the departments have a celebration. And so I think that our retirees are being honored in multiple ways over the course of, the last few weeks. And then Friends of Oregon School District is excited to announce that the Oregon High School Academic Success Center, and that's a new thing, has been awarded a Creating Opportunities for Oregon Learners, or COOL grant, to fund student tutor training and supports. So with the opening of the blended learning addition in the high school, which is really, remember, just actually putting classrooms into the to the first floor of the addition that was a part of the 2014 referendum. So that is being completed, and a lot of blended learning is moving into that portion. And so different areas of the high school are being dedicated to serving different student needs, and they're very excited about the Academic Support Center. It will open in the fall of 2022. It's designed to meet the individual needs of 9th and 10th grade students through specific strategies and interventions to close the academic opportunity gaps, foster closer relationships between students, educators, and parents, and provide direct instruction. And Jackie Craker, the OHS academic specialist, was the one who submitted for the grant and is one of the people spearheading this effort. Research has shown that trained student tutors accelerate learning, build confidence, and foster a sense of belonging for students. And so the academic engagement specialist, Ms. Craker, she manages the center, and this was a position added this school year to meet the academic needs expressed by students and made visible during the pandemic. And the academic success specialist or engagement specialist is one of the positions we paid for with ESSER funds, specifically to address the needs that we saw. So while perhaps the legislature wanted us to use ESSER funds to pay bills, we have used ESSER funds to meet student needs and not to pay for operational costs. And I think that's a really important thing to continue to underscore. Learning about Memorial Day. One of the best ways that we can remember and honor those who've served our country is by teaching our students about the meaning of Memorial Day. And so some examples of the activities that took place last week included Memorial Day lessons, reading books, singing songs, of course, reciting the pledge, and making Memorial Day mini books. And these are all examples from Brooklyn Elementary. Rome Corners had their last 5th and 6th grade orchestra concert of the year. And so it used to be that the concerts were in the cafeteria, and now we have way too many students for the cafeteria. So now all of the concerts are in the gym. Music continues to be extraordinarily popular with our students as soon as they can begin to take it. And then our Oregon Middle School Careers class. There's been a little bit of information about this on social media too. And this activity that you see depicted in the pictures is a capstone of our 8th grade Middle School Careers unit. It offers students an opportunity to learn and practice employability and workplace skills. Students form management teams and design and create a plan for operating a small business. Some activities include developing a business budget, human resources plan that includes 2 to 3 job descriptions for company employees, and developing one major business improvement or innovation that could be included. And so investors come in who are community members, and the students have to pitch to their investors. So some real life applicability to what's happening in the middle school careers class. We also want to say we have an 8th grade Black student affinity group, and this group of students said that what they'd really like to see is more representation around the building, and they really wanted to include a piece from our local artist, Desiree Mayo. So you can see they all look pretty proud of Ms. Mayo's artistic contribution, and the fact that it was their idea and they chose where to put it and all of the good stuff. We also had a really cool opportunity funded from our AOD grant, and it's called the Beyond Beautiful Book Group. This is Dr. Jasmine Zapata. She's also known as Dr. Jazz. You see her in the purple, sitting down. She's a pediatrician and the chief medical officer and state epidemiologist and for DHS. And she recently spent time with our Oregon middle school students to talk about the book she wrote, A Girl's Guide to Unlocking the Power of Inner Beauty, Self-Esteem, Resilience, and Courage. Now, we have a series of slides celebrating our athletic teams because the season's ended and the kids have a lot to be proud of. So you can see here's our baseball team. Our coach is Jake Soul. We have 11 seniors who are graduating. And so you can see them on the screen here. That's a really big number. Some of the season highlights that they really wanted to underscore is 16-1 victory in the regional final. Pretty cool stuff. A 13-0 victory at Miller Park when they were able to play there. And a 4-2 win against Madison East on senior night. We also have Tyler Soul as named Conference Player of the Year. So congratulations to all of our students. And one of the things that is really cool is that the boys are also frequent volunteers for Oregon Youth Baseball, the Optimist Club, and the Oregon Food Pantry. That really makes a difference. We also had our student golf team, our boys golf wind up. This was Coach Sarah Mess with us this year. They finished second place in the Badger West Conference. So good job on that. Logan Martin and Billy McCorkle were first team all-conference. Deacon Bush was second team all-conference. So great job. And then, as Mr. Pliner mentioned in his graduation speech, those of us who were at girls soccer sectionals also had the lacrosse club team state championship pulled up on our phone to watch the live stream because our lacrosse team on Saturday night won the state championship. This is a club sport, but it's not very often that our students in a club sport get to win the state championship, so we thought this was definitely worth celebrating. And then speaking of state championship, we have our girls soccer team, coached by Bobby Nichols. They are undefeated conference champs. They are regional champs and now sectionals. So they are going into state. I think, what do they play at 1:30 on Thursday at Uline in Milwaukee? Super excited to see this team play. Softball, Coach Scott Merkus, 12-3 in the Badger Conference, 16-7 overall. First team all-conference, Kate Davis and Carly Zeich. Second team, Lauren Etienne, Haley Berman, Emily Crow, and Jordan Baumgartner. Oh, and they also had some academic recognition, which is pretty darn cool. Academic All-State, Jordan Baumgartner, Emily Crow, and Kate Davis. And Academic All-American, Jordan Baumgartner, Haley Berman, Hannah Corning, and Emily Crow, and Kate Davis, Lauren Etienne, Annabelle Monte, Haley Richter, Bridget Tushowski, and Carly Zeich. Talk about an academically oriented team. That's really exciting. Tennis, they were our conference winners. You saw this great picture before, but as long as we're celebrating everybody, we're going to celebrate them again. Track and field, Coach Ned Leese. 127 athletes with 19 athletes advancing to the state meet. And we, Giordano Zielinski medaled as a champion. And the conference finished, both boys and girls finished second. Giordano's had 3 event championships at conference, broke 3 school records. Exciting stuff. And then we also had the high school culminating band conference. I was lucky enough to watch this unfold, and it was really a beautiful thing. It was last Thursday night in the Performing Arts Center. The director, Miss Yeager, and her student teacher, Caitlin Ryan, led the bands through selections under the theme of collaboration and empathy. And they wanted to say thank you to the Friends of Oregon School District for the Cool Grant that they received in the fall of 2020, which was used to join in a consortium and study and perform a phenomenal performance called Unspoken. that was showcased the collaboration between members of the choir, the orchestra, and the band. So many thanks to FOSD. But all of the seniors were honored. Something special was said about each one of them. It was a very nice event. I don't know how many of you know, but we have a Madison-based theater award called the Jerry Awards. And it's a pretty fancy deal that usually takes place at the Overture Center. And we had 3 of our students who were nominated for this: Anna Martin, Brendan Moore, and Dan Shimon. And Brendan Moore, this is kind of fun. He was selected as one of the 2 students who will represent Overture's Jerry Awards at the National High School Musical Theater Awards in New York City at the end of June. So a pretty big accomplishment there too. School to Career. This is one of our high school seniors working at one community bank. Really enjoys and appreciates the experience, and she plans to attend UW La Crosse to major in finance. Sophia Davidson is one of 11 Dane County students to receive a National Merit Scholarship. That's an amazing thing. 3 of the 11 attend school in the Madison School District. 2 are at Edgewood, 1 from Madison Country Day School, Middleton High School, Monona Grove, Oregon, Stoughton, and Wanakee. The 11 students from Dane County were among more than 2,600 winners of this college-sponsored scholarship from across the country. So congratulations, Sophia. I don't know how many of you saw this on social media, but we thought it was worth putting out there. It was the Bus Driver Appreciation Breakfast Morning, so many of us from the district office were in this room preparing for breakfast, looking out the window, and you see a couple of strange things being carried, and you don't think much of it. But then after a while, you're like, what is going on? And then we were informed that it was anything but a backpack day, which meant that the seniors were bringing anything other than a backpack to carry their necessities. So you see toboggans, children's cars, a playpen. They were very creative, and it gave everybody who saw it a pretty big chuckle. And it was, I think, a super fun and appropriate way to have a senior prank day. It brought humor to the whole school all day without causing a problem for anybody. So way to go, seniors, for thinking creatively. And then one of our best new traditions is when our graduates, after their breakfast, the breakfast that honors them when they get departmental awards, they put on their gowns, they get on buses, and they walk through the elementary schools with Pomp and Circumstance playing. And the kids are either lined up outside or in the hallway, often with signs welcoming the kids and saying congratulations or go Panthers. There are high fives abound, and I think that it's really nostalgic for our seniors to go back to their elementary schools in their graduation gowns and see some of their old teachers and remember when they were that little. And I think it's aspirational for our younger students to see these really terrific kids walking through their schools in full regalia. So you can see they took some pictures in front of the schools as a way to commemorate. And then those same students in those same gowns walked into our spectator gym on Sunday afternoon, and it was a very, very special time. All the families calling out to their students as they walked past, and just a lot of pride and a lot of joy. And you can see it on the faces of our kids. A lot of pride and a lot of joy for everybody involved. And the best pictures are always after the ceremony, when all the friends are together in the parking lot and on the lawns with their families, with their grandparents, with everybody there to take pictures of them and their good friends on this special day. And I think just about everybody who's graduated from high school has a picture or two of their friends on that day holding up their graduation diplomas. it's a bit of a rite of passage. And that's that.
Wow. How do you follow that? That is really something. Thank you for bringing us up to today, Dr. Bergstrom. So as we move to closing our future agenda, we are getting back together on July 27th, or June 27th, I'm sorry, June 27th. We will have meetings both from visioning as well as both, right? Both are going to be, both visioning and policy are probably going to have meetings by then. So we'll have reports coming in from them. We will very likely be talking more about a fall operating referendum. That will certainly, those conversations will certainly continue. Nate and Peyton, this is it, right?
Oh, they may be back next year. These are just sophomores here.
Oh my gosh, what was I thinking? We will see you around. We just may not see you at this table.
Oh, you may.
So, well, give somebody else a chance, for crying out loud. You've set a very high bar, both of you. So thank you for spending your time here with us. We appreciate your perspective. You've had lots to impart to us, lots of activities to bring us up to speed on, especially for those of you, or those of us who don't have kids at school this year. The next time we get together, we will be leading up to summer semester, which will start within 10 days of when we get together the next time. Anything else that needs to be added to the agenda, don't hesitate to give Krista a call so we can get that on the agenda if need be. Is there anything else for the good of the group? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Heather? Mary? We are adjourned. Thank you so much for coming tonight.
All in favor?
Oh, yes, of course. Thank you.